Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first meeting after the summer break. We certainly had some glorious weather, and I hope that you were able to enjoy it as much as I did. Today's speaker from Georgian Bay Forever, Brooke Harrison, will be giving us some important information about the waters of Georgian Bay. We all like to look at the beautiful Nottawasaga Bay, and some of us go out on the water for activities such as fishing, boating, kayaking, swimming, or paddleboarding. It is important that we keep these waters clean for the future generations. I listened to 3 of the webinars presented by the group of biology students who were hired this summer by GBF and was astounded at the research that is being done to protect our precious water supplies. And now I will turn it over to our speaker chair. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Today we're welcoming our speaker, Brooke Harrison, Project Coordinator of Georgian Bay Forever's Divert and Capture, the fight to keep microplastics out of our water. Brooke lives, works, and plays around Georgian Bay. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree from Trent University in Environmental and Earth Sciences. Brooke's presentation today is Plastics in the Environment. She will introduce us to Georgian Bay Forever, explain the extent of plastic pollution in our local waterways, explain what Georgian Bay Forever is doing to combat the problem, and then share insights into ways you and I can help to reduce the amount of single-use plastics. It is my great pleasure to introduce Brooke Harrison.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for starting off early with my dog jumping up. I am just going to share my screen here. And I'm hoping you can see just the main screen. Is that correct?
Yep, we're looking good.
Perfect. Okay. If I'm looking over here, it's just because I have a second monitor. There were some notes, but that is what I'm looking at over here. So awesome. Thank you, everyone, so much for inviting me here tonight or today. I hope everyone had a great summer and got to enjoy Georgian Bay, whether that be swimming or fishing or hiking around it or just enjoying the beautiful sunsets. I live in Tobermory, and I certainly get to love Georgian Bay every single day. So I love the work I'm doing, and I'm so lucky to be able to be in this field. So during this presentation, as mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the extent of the plastic pollution problem, some different projects that Georgian Bay Forever is working on, and then some really importantly, what we can all do every day starting today of how we can all reduce our single-use plastics. So just to get started, Georgian Bay Forever, we are a charity dedicated to aquatic environmental sciences, specifically on Georgian Bay. Our mission is to protect, enhance, and restore the aquatic ecosystem of Georgian Bay by funding accredited research on water levels, water quality, and ecosystems. Last year, we got to celebrate our 25th anniversary, and we're so excited for the projects that we're working on and the projects that are still to come. So before I really dive into our projects, I really want to highlight the IPCC report that was released just a few weeks ago. At GBF, we focus specifically on the local aquatic environment. However, we have to acknowledge that climate change is going to and already is affecting us, and it is affecting us all around Georgian Bay right now. The key point and takeaways from this report is that climate change is undoubtedly being caused by human activity, and every region on the globe is affected by climate change, and we are already seeing some of these impacts. In Ontario this year, we saw that the northern wildfires doubled in the average 10 years just this past summer. So that's just one of a lot of kind of examples of how climate change is impacting us right now and in our local region. So it's the future of the climate really depends heavily on the actions that we are taking today. So plastics is going to be the focus of this presentation. And I just want to kind of talk about where did this all begin? How did we get into this heavy reliance that we all have on plastics in our everyday lives? So plastics really, the rise of plastics began in the 1950s due to the convenience, availability, low cost, and durability, which made it a very popular material to be used. This image here was in, it was captioned Throwaway Living, and it was in Life magazine in the 1955. And the caption says, the objects flying through the air in this picture would take 40 hours to clean, except no household wife needs to bother. So we've come a long way since this photo in a few different ways. However, what that really highlights is, yeah, we don't have to clean it anymore. We can just throw away and forget about it. If we throw it away, it's out of mind, out of sight, it's gone. But every single piece of plastic that has ever been developed is still on this earth and will be on this earth for hundreds more years to come. So microplastics are found all around the globe. They're commonly found in ocean gyres. We may have all heard about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but what is really alarming to know is that there's actually a higher concentration of plastics in the Great Lakes than there are in the oceans. So this is really concerning to us all. I hope. It's scary, and that's something that really needs to change. We worked with many partners, and every single fish sample, beer sample, water sample, all contain samples of microplastics in it. And I also want to highlight that this is what I'm talking about today is the single-use plastics. I think we can all acknowledge there's a lot of great things that have come with plastics in the medical field, in the way our cars are developed, in safety equipment. There's a lot of really great uses of plastic. It's the single-use plastics that is what I'm really going to be talking about today. The plastics that we use for 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then throw it away. That is what we really need to focus on and try to reduce our consumption of. So Canadians generate approximately 31 million tons of garbage every single year, and that's 2.7 kilograms of garbage per person every single day. So moving so there's macroplastics and then there's microplastics. So macroplastics are when we see plastic grocery bag, a water bottle, kind of some larger pieces of plastic. But when I talk about the plastics in the Great Lakes, these are all different forms of microplastics that you can't actually see with the naked eye. So there's a few different kinds of microplastics. There's fragments, which are just small chunks of plastics that come off from these macroplastics. So that could be through wind and weather damage, through wave action, through sun, chipping at it, different ways that these fragments are coming off of these macroplastics. Then we have fibers. So with fibers is what I'm going to be chatting about a bit today. Fibers are from our clothing. So a lot of our clothing is actually made from plastics, and every single time we do laundry, our clothing can shed plastics into the water. Foam, which I'm going to be chatting a bit about today as well, is another kind of plastics that we are seeing in the environment. A lot of the ones that I'll be talking about today is from our dock floats. So we use foam to float a dock, and then when your dock just all of a sudden is sinking 10 years after, that's because the foam is now in the environment. Nurdles. So nurdles are the first forms of how plastic water bottles, plastic anything is made. So it comes in these little forms of nurdles, and then it's manufactured into the way that we desire it to be. However, these nurdles are so small and they easily can slip, fall, go through stormwater drainage. So we're seeing a lot of nurdles in the ecosystem as well. And then microbeads. I feel like we've all maybe heard of microbeads. This is often used in cosmetics, in face wash or toothpaste. The Canadian government did ban these. We're still seeing them kind of sometimes in the market, but this was a really big win of banning these microbeads. So over 8,000 million tons of plastics have been produced, and most of this has been disposed of. This graph shows that currently there's 2,500 million tons are in use. Over half have been discarded. So that is in a landfill, sometimes in a recycling, but everything that's been discarded, 1% of that is in the environment. Since 1950, everything that has been developed since plastics really became kind of this popular item, and again, for convenience that it was developed, again, all of the plastics ever developed is still on this environment. And it's important to note that the number one most common plastic disposed of is single-use food containers. But then second is textiles. So textiles is our clothing, curtains, couches, carpets, any of this kind of textile materials. So researchers estimate that roughly 10,000 tons of plastics enter the Great Lakes every single year. Microplastics are found in surface water, sediment, and wildlife within and around the Great Lakes, and reaching as high as 1.25 million particles per squared kilometer. So again, we're seeing higher concentrations in the Great Lakes than we are seeing in the ocean. So we always hear about these plastics in the ocean, but what is really concerning is the amount of plastics in the Great Lakes. And a lot of us, like I would say majority of us, take our water from the Great Lakes. So there's 34 million people that live around the Great Lakes. But what that also means is there's 34 million people polluting the Great Lakes at the same time. So that's kind of in the Great Lakes. On a larger level. There are 10 specific rivers that account for 93% of the total plastic dumped in the seas every single year. This graph here, you can see where those 10 rivers are. This is how a lot of the garbage is reaching the oceans through these rivers. But it's important to note that it's not from these specific areas. For many, many, many years, and still happening, our landfills are filling up. Many of our landfills around where we all live are almost at capacity and are going to be closing soon. So it is relatively easy and cheap is the solution, which is not a good solution, to just send it overseas and they'll deal with it. Many of these countries don't have the regulations that we have. So it's not that these countries are producing the garbage, they are just receiving the garbage from us, from North America and Europe. Canada, we export a large amount of recyclable and non-recyclable waste to these different countries. In January of 2008, China greatly reduced the amount of waste they were intaking, and that kind of put a lot of pressure on us to find a different solution. This was the cheap and easy way, and again, one of those out of sight, out of mind. When we send it overseas, it's not our problem. However, it's still in the environment, and what's in the environment in those oceans do get to our oceans as well. So it's really putting a lot of pressure on us to find new landfills, but also find new recycling facilities. Only 9% of all recycling that we put in our blue box actually gets recycled. Most of our recycling goes to our landfills as well. So what solutions can we all, put pressure on to find better recycling facilities in Ontario and in Canada? When it does get into the ocean, there's been a lot of research, and I do apologize. I know these images are quite disturbing, and some of you may have seen these images online. There's unfortunately hundreds and millions of these photos online, and they're very real images, unfortunately. So the marine animals are at high risk of interacting with the plastic that is in our oceans. They can get entangled in these abandoned plastic fishing nets, which are often discarded due to inclement weather or illegal fishing. It's easier to just leave the fishing net. And this is a study here, a peer-reviewed study of pretty well any animal that has been studied has been found to have plastic in the system. And when they have this entanglement, it's you know, look at these turtles, look at these birds. There's no way of survival for these. And a huge way that animals interact with plastics is through consumption. So animals are consuming plastics. They don't know the difference between food and plastic. So when they're consuming it, their stomachs are physically full, but there's no nutrients. There's no way for these animals to digest these plastics or pass these plastics. So they're physically full, but they're actually dying of starvation because they can't pass it. Their stomachs are full, but they're dying of starvation because there's nothing left for them to consume. And we're seeing this in a lot of seabirds specifically. But again, every single fish, animal that has been tested to look for plastics has come back with positive plastics in their system. We did a study with the Rockman Lab for fish in Georgian Bay, and the average fish had about 25 particles, plastic particles in their system. If they're bottom feeding fish, it was significantly higher, closer to about 100 plastic particles per fish. So it's not like this is, again, far away. This is happening right here in Georgian Bay. And again, every single fish that we did sample did have plastics in them. So this is really scary. This is concerning, and kind of what can we do about this? And not to kind of alarm you, but it's not just plastics that we're seeing this in. Humans consume about the size of a credit card of plastic every single week, and that's just increasing. It's in our beer, it's in our salt, it's in our tap water, it's in our, if you drink from our bottled water, it's significantly higher. It's in our shellfish, which then goes up the trophic level. It's in our fish. It's been in rain samples and snow samples. We've tested ice core samples, and 100 years ago there's no evidence of plastics, and then you look at the most recent years and there's lots of plastics in these ice core samples, and this is in remote regions in the Arctic Circle, and that is from precipitation. It's not from communities up there, it's from precipitation. So it's all over. We know there's plastics in the Marianas Trench, on the top of Mount Everest. So what can we do about this? There's a lot of research kind of going underway right now to kind of figure out what that means to the human body as well. We don't know. We know we're consuming it, but we don't know what those impacts are. However, I can imagine that it's not going to be great. We know there's a lot of carcinogens in plastics, and we know it links to reproductive health with animals. So we don't really know what that means yet for humans. However, what we do know is that because of our mismanagement of our waste, it has led us to be consuming 5 grams of plastic every single week. So now that I've really scared everyone, and I do apologize for that, I promise we're going to get more into the positive parts now. I'm going to really highlight what some of the projects that Georgian Bay Forever is working on, and then kind of really wrap the presentation up with what we can all do, because I hope what we know now is that there is a lot of plastics in our environment, and yes, they are from us. There's no doubt about that. So how can we change it, and how can we improve it? Georgian Bay Forever, Georgian Bay, we all in some way or another, I'm sure we all have a hobby that is around Georgian Bay, whether that's, again, fishing, hiking, swimming, skiing up Blue Mountain and looking at the views, boating on it, whatever it might be. We all love Georgian Bay, and we all love the Great Lakes. So we all have a part to do to really protect them. So we have 4 different plastic diversion projects here at Georgian Bay Forever. So I'm going to highlight these 4 plastic diversion tactics that we are using. So we have a microfiber filter that is attached to laundry machines. We have Seabins, gutter bins, and trash traps, which I will highlight now. So Diversion 2.0 is one of our projects. We have installed these three different trash trapping devices all around Georgian Bay, and we were kind of really trying to understand what are we finding, what are the pollutants around Georgian Bay, so that once we have this data, we can really tackle it at the source. But first we need to figure out what those problems are. So Diversion 2.0 is one of these research projects that we're working on. So you can see on your left-hand side, this is what a gutter bin looks like. So this goes in stormwater drainage. So along streets, depending on the infrastructure of the town, but often stormwater drainage flows directly into the source of water. So for, say, Collingwood, it goes directly into Georgian Bay. Sometimes it does go through wastewater facilities, but it depends on the infrastructure of the town. These Seabins, these are like floating garbage cans essentially. So they go in the water and they have a suction, so they get any of these macro plastics or macro garbage into it, and then we can empty the Seabin every day, every other day, however often it is. And then these trash traps at the bottom, so those go on these stormwater drainage. So anytime, again, from this top left photo, anytime it goes through the stormwater system and goes flowing directly out into the bay, this is what these trash traps would do, would collect these macro garbage. So gutter bins and litter traps. So we have installed 8 of these in Collingwood. They are the first to be installed in Canada. So we're super excited for that. And we are testing, these systems. So the gutter bins and litter traps, they're both very similar. They go in the stormwater drainage. And so this one here, you can see town employees emptying this for us. This is right on Main Street in Collingwood. And they're specifically designed with these Mundus bags. So these Mundus bags, you can see they are quite large. So we're trying to kind of figure out how often we need to empty it, but it has been quite often. And the main things that we are seeing in there is of course, cigarette butts, unfortunately. So that is the gutter bins. And then we have these trash traps. So trash traps and gutter bins, they work in the similar way in the fact that they collect all the rainwater that would push it off the road, off the streets, and go directly into the bay. So these, the gutter bins can collect approximately 100 kilograms yearly, and the trash traps are able to capture pollutants 25 millimeters and larger. They are built with an overflow in case there is a large rain event, that it doesn't flood the system. The trash traps, they are expected to be emptied about every three or four times a year. And then lastly, the Seabin, so you can kind of see a neat image or a little video there. So these are, we have, I think it's 16 all around Georgian Bay. So from Tobermory all the way around to Point of Barrel. So we have quite a few of them in Georgian Bay. They kind of work like a pool Roomba almost. They're sucking in the water, and they can collect it on a calm day. They can collect a 50-meter radius. So they're placed in strategic locations to understand where the water flows, so we can collect as much macro debris as possible. The Seabins also have a filtration pad, so it can collect fuel and oil spills. And this is a really interesting and exciting part of it, but also disturbing part of these filtration pads almost have to be cleaned daily. It's really shocking. You know, in this photo you can see there is some oil spill, but there's often it looks beautiful. You can't see anything, and within a day it's completely soaked of oil and fuel. So that has been a really big learning curve that we have been seeing and really disturbed by. The main things that we've been seeing in these Seabins are those nurdles that I was talking about, which is how a lot of plastics are made from this original point of these nurdles. We have seen quite a few cigarette butts, some balloons, water bottles, kind of more larger pieces of plastic for the Seabins. We do catch some vegetation, of course, but we are able to root through that. For all 3 of these devices, we do deep dives. So what a deep dive is we are doing 10 per unit per year. And what we're looking for is we're looking to understand what it is we're collecting. So this is some examples from the summer. This was in Honey Harbor. These photos were taken, but we use this information to really understand what it is that we're collecting, that these devices are collecting, so we can really make sense of it. And we are putting this data into an app that was developed by University of Toronto, and everyone in the Great Lakes who have a Seabin or a gutter bin, mostly Seabins because those are the ones kind of more widely used right now. Everyone is putting this data into the same app. So what we're seeing in Honey Harbor versus what we're seeing in Seabins in Chicago or Thunder Bay, we're able to kind of really compare the results and compare the data to really have a good understanding of where in the Great Lakes this macro garbage is, and then use the data to really move forward and tackle it at the source. So this is really exciting that it is really a Great Lakes wide initiative. So this is just a few photos here that you can see. A lot of the things that we are collecting is dock foam as well. So it can be larger chunks. You can see pretty well in all of these photos is dock foam. It is probably one of our most popular items that we are seeing in the Seabins. In 2019, we hosted a variety of different shoreline cleanups, and the #1 item was dock foam that was collected, which I will talk about in a few minutes. So moving on to the fourth and final device that we're using in Georgian Bay is this microfiber filter. So this is called the Filtral 160. This is our second project, so Divert and Capture. So this is the project that I manage. So there's 3 main goals of Divert and Capture. One is to do actual shoreline cleanups. So these are some photos of the shoreline cleanups that we've done. The second part of it is to provide public with information. So we were chatting earlier about the webinar series, which I'll give some information about, but also presentations like this of really discussing how we can all make some changes on our plastic use. But then the third and kind of main component of Divert and Capture is installing microfiber filters on people's laundry machines to have a better understanding of microfibers and microplastics that are shed from our clothing. So I want to highlight some really exciting results that we've been starting to see. So in 2018, we partnered with the Rockman Lab at University of Toronto, and we understood that majority of the microplastics that we were seeing in these beer samples, salt samples, fish samples, they were microfibers. So again, microfibers are shed from our clothing. So we tested these filters. You can see on the left, we tested these samples in the lab, and they were 89% effective in the lab setting. So we wanted to test them in the community level. So in Parry Sound, this is where this project first originated. We installed 100 filters in people's homes in Parry Sound. 100 homes is about 10% of the population. We tested the wastewater treatment plant. So if you're on town water, everything from your dishwasher, your shower, your laundry machine, your sink, everything flows through the wastewater treatment plant. It's then treated at the wastewater treatment plant and then released back into, in this case, Georgian Bay. So we installed 100 filters. So we were expecting to see about a 10% decrease in microfibers because we tested the wastewater treatment plant final effluent before we installed these filters and after we installed these filters. So we were hoping to see about a 10% reduction in microfibers at the wastewater treatment plant level. When we installed this in people's homes, we asked them to do laundry as normal every about 3 to 5 weeks. You had to clean out your filter, and we asked that you store your fibers. So it's the fibers that look exactly like they do in your lint filter on your dryer. That's essentially what these filters are. We have them in the dryer. We don't have them in our laundry machine. So that is what this filter is the replacement for. But every 4 months, I picked up the samples from everyone's home and we analyzed it. Is it polyester we're seeing? Is it blue denim we're seeing? Is it orange cotton we're seeing? Kind of what is the dominant fibers that we are seeing out of people's homes right now? So we do have a full peer-reviewed report coming out very, very shortly. Fortunately, I can't share all the great results quite yet, but please keep an eye out for those results as we are very excited. But I will show you this. So This is the results from the final effluent at the wastewater treatment plant. So you can see on the right-hand side is before the filters were installed, and then on the left is after the filters were installed. So as I mentioned, we were expecting to see about a 10% decrease since we installed 10% of the homes with these fiber filters on, and that's pretty much exactly what we are seeing, which is very, very exciting. So again, I will have this report out shortly. It's just not quite there yet. But to put this in perspective, so since we did see about a 10% decrease at the wastewater treatment plant level, at the Parry Sound wastewater treatment plant, it processes about 3 million liters per day, which means even reducing the fibers 1 fiber per liter, we would stop 3 million fibers per day from entering the bay. So that's a huge number for a very small town of Parry Sound. So this, we're seeing about 4.5 reduction is what is the results that we were seeing. So we stopped 4.5 fibers per liter from entering Georgian Bay, and those numbers are based off just 1 fiber per liter from entering Georgian Bay. So those numbers are very exciting, and again, for a very small town, imagine what that would look like if 34 million people around the Great Lakes all had one of these filters on. So you can really see that this is where the dominant plastic is entering from our Georgian Bay, from our homes. And sorry, I will mention though too, the wastewater treatment plant can stop about 90 up to 99% of the microfibers from entering the bay. Every time we do a load of laundry, 700,000 fibers are shed from one single load of laundry. And that doesn't matter if it's new clothes, old clothes. Every time we do laundry, that's how many fibers are shed. So with the wastewater treatment plant collecting 99% of that, even that 99% is often used as fertilizer on agriculture fields, that sludge. So it's still in the environment, it still gets in the environment just in different ways. So that's often why we see it in our soils at such high concentrations, because it's being taken from these wastewater treatment plants. So the ultimate goal of divert and capture is to make it mandatory that at the manufacturer level, every single laundry machine is fitted out with a fiber filter inside of it. So again, exactly the same as the dryers. We have it in our dryers. Why don't we have it in our laundry machines? Stopping it at the source is the easiest way to prevent it from getting into the Great Lakes and the oceans. So that is what we're really working towards, and we're super excited. Bill 279 is on the table right now in Ontario. It has passed its first reading. It's a private member's bill, so it does have to pass through 3 readings. If this is something that you support, I strongly encourage you to write or email your MPP and saying you support Bill 279, because what that does is it makes it mandatory that all new laundry machines will have a filter built into the laundry machine. So it has been passed in Japan and France right now. Any new laundry machine in those 2 countries will be mandatory to have these filters. So it's possible, it's going to come. It's just how soon can we get it and stop these plastics from getting into the environment. And then just before I move on from the fibers, I just want to highlight that it's not just fibers that we're seeing. This is some of the plastics that we found while looking at the sample. So glitter is a form of microplastics, beads, these are all different forms of microplastics that all of a sudden when your shirt isn't as sparkly from all your sequins that you had on it, we know now where those sequins and plastics are going. So think about that when you're buying your next article of clothing. So then shoreline cleanups is another huge part of divert and capture. We use these tally sheets to really have a good understanding of what it actually is that we're collecting. So this picture here is from 2019, this graph. This line that goes all the way up is from dock foam. So that was the main piece of litter that we were finding along our shorelines, next to, of course, cigarette butts. But dock foam is a huge component of what we are seeing. This summer, we were able to host 27 shoreline cleanups with 176 volunteers. We cleaned over close to 37,000 meters, and we collected over 1,000 pounds of plastic that would have been in our environment. So if anyone is interested in doing a shoreline cleanup on their own stretch of shoreline, we do have these tally sheets online, and I strongly encourage you to fill this out and submit it. So that it's similar. We use this data so we can really understand what it is we're seeing on our shoreline so we can tackle it at the source. And I just want to really highlight that last year, the United States taxpayers spent nearly $11 billion cleaning up litter. And in Toronto, they spend over $27 million collecting litter every year. So it's not like it's cheap to clean up litter. So it's really important that we, tackle it at the source and prevent it from getting there, because we are spending money cleaning up litter. So it's really important that we all kind of move and shift gears towards tackling at the source. But I just want to highlight, so in 2019, when we found disturbing amounts of dock foam, and again, this dock foam is from when you have a floating dock and all of a sudden from wind action, animals burying in it, wave action, ice breakup, docks that have dock foam in it last about maybe 10 years before it starts to sink and you need a new dock foam. That foam is in the environment, and you can see some of these pictures. This is what a lot of our shoreline looks like. It gets so small that it's hard to collect, hard to clean up. So we partnered with University of Toronto to understand the impacts of polystyrene. And then we also partnered with MPP Norm Miller, who is from Muskoka Parry Sound, and he brought forward Bill 228, which was another private member's bill. And I'm so excited to say that Bill 228 has actually just passed its third reading back in March, and starting in 2023, it is now illegal to sell any new unencapsulated dock foam, which is a huge win for the environment, and we're super excited for this. And what this means is that there's not going to be for sale any more of those unencapsulated dock foam pieces. So this is a huge win, but what I really, really want to highlight is using these shoreline cleanups and submitting this data. That is what led to this. Without this data saying, in 2019, we cleaned up this much amount of dock foam, we wouldn't have got to this point because we wouldn't have had the hard data to prove that it was an issue. So it's really exciting. And if you are interested in doing a shoreline cleanup, or again, writing about 279, the bill for microfibers, I really encourage you to do so. So switching gears a litter. I'm always just thinking about litter. Switching gears a little, now we're going to kind of steer away from what GBF has done and some projects that we are working on and that we hope that you support, but what you can do and what we can all do. So I know, Caroline, you said that you were watching this webinar series, so thank you so much. But we had a really, really great webinar series hosted this summer by our 4 wonderful plastic students that we hired. One was on wearing plastic, is recycling plastic working, and the third and final one was on plastic waters. This presentation kind of takes a bit of pieces from all of them, so if you want to learn more, I really encourage you to go to YouTube and watch these. There's a lot of really, really great information on there. As part of Diversion 2.0, we also have a program called Yellowfish Road, and we are looking for groups to participate in that. So this might be something that your group may be interested. If you guys have young kids or grandkids and have a group, or if you know any teachers, or if you're a guide leader or scouts leader or brownies leader or church group, whatever it might be, if you have a group of kind of school age children, what this program is understanding that what goes down the storm drainage enters the water. So it's a really, really great engaging hands-on program for kids to understand, kind of just starting to understand the waterways and that it's all connected. So if anyone is interested in or has a group in mind who would be interested in this, we supply all the equipment. It's completely free to you, but it's a really great program for kids. So if anyone is interested in that, please let me know. And then we also have a program called Plastic Free Georgian Bay. So this is for if anyone owns a business around Georgian Bay and would be interested in joining Plastic Free Georgian Bay. It's a group that we can all kind of suggest ideas, suggest alternatives, learn about practical tips, how we can change that in our business, and you'll be recognized on our website for all the amazing work you're doing. So again, if you're interested in joining Plastic Free Georgian Bay, we strongly encourage you to get in touch and be part of that. And then just to kind of bring it to all of us as individuals, take a stand, educate family and friends. If you learned something from this presentation, please tell your friend about it. Make the environment a key conversation in your group. Really learn from each other. I'm excited to kind of discuss with everyone at the end of this. I know every time I talk with someone, I learn something new as well. Be outspoken. Cigarette butts drive me crazy. They are litter. If you see someone littering, or if you know someone always chucks it out their car door, ask them why they do it. Explain to them that it is litter, and just educate them in the nicest way possible. Talk to businesses. This is a really important one. They're not going to change if they don't know. If there's no pressure for them to change, they won't change. You know, if you're at a grocery store and you don't understand why something is wrapped in plastic, ask them. I am very annoying to my grocery store. I always ask them why this stuff is wrapped in plastic or in styrofoam. Why? It's not necessary. So really try to demand change, and really put pressure on them. Write your local MPP about things that you're passionate about, and things that you would like to see them support. Be a conscious consumer. So again, this every time you buy something, you're voting for a future that you want. So, you know, buy from local stores, buy from stores that are using less plastic, buy from stores that are supporting local. Really try to focus on where you are wanting to spend money. And the biggest thing is, if you don't need it, don't buy it. You know, you don't need to go to your local refillery store and buy everything. Finish with what you have and then start looking for alternatives. Kind of, I say, start in one room in your house, like start in your bathroom. Look at where you rely on plastic. How can you change that? Make little changes. Empower your everyday purchases. So this is, again, shop at businesses that you support and that you want to support. And if you know the owner, if they're great stores in your community, support them. Those are the ones who are really trying to make a difference and really using alternative packaging and everything like that. Refuse single-use plastic wherever possible. Use alternatives, and of course, pick up pollution. Pick it up if you see it. If you have time to fill out a tally sheet, we would love that. But if you just see something, instead of walking by it, pick it up and throw it out. And of course, don't litter yourself. And I just want to end. I know this is a lot. It can be a lot. It's really hard to start. This image is really messy and confusing, and that's often how people think kind of starting your plastic-free journey is. But a lot of these alternatives are cheaper. They save you money. I think we often think it's so expensive to get all these alternatives, but use what you have. No one is perfectly plastic free, but we can all kind of strive towards that and all reduce our plastic in a little bit. And I just want to end with a huge thank you. Please know that your support enables our work, and we couldn't do this without you. So thank you to our donors and thank you to our funders. And I would love to open the floor and see if there's any questions, or if anyone has any amazing things that they do to reduce their plastic use. I'd love to open the floor to everyone. And thank you so much again.
Well, thank you, Brooke. I invite everybody to unmute themselves and then pose questions if they have some. And it is my privilege to go maybe start with one. So I was impressed by the filtering system on the washing machines. But I'm not quite clear how this is going to work. So then the homeowners empty those filters into their garbage, and it goes into the garbage truck and goes on to a landfill, and eventually rainwater will wash that stuff away again.
Yeah, so there's definitely no right solution, and it's one of those things, you know, buy natural clothes instead of clothes that are made from plastics. Buy clothes that are going to last a lot of wears instead of, you know, some of the cheaper ones that, you know, last only one or two washes and then they're destined for the landfill anyways. I'm sure we all have more than enough clothes in our closets than we need. for the program specifically. So if you're in Collingwood and you're on town water and you're interested in having a filter, that is where our next focus area is right now. So we're installing 300 filters in Collingwood and doing a similar project than we're doing in Perry Sound. For those specific ones, we ask that they store the fibers in their freezer, and we collect them every few months. But yes, it's the exact same as what we're collecting from our laundry machines is exactly what you clean out the lint filter with. So you dispose of it in the garbage. I know it's not the best solution. However, it's significantly better than being in our waterways or in our air. Like if you see colorful dust, that is microplastics. Like we're breathing in plastics, and that's often in the form of these microfibers as well. So yeah, it's definitely not the best solution to go to the landfill, but it's much better than being in our waterways. And I know some people use it to start a fire or something. I discourage that, because then it's just in the air, and then you're breathing it in as well. It's one of those challenging kind of double-edged swords. Best solution, but better solution is and honestly, don't do your laundry so often. Wash, and a huge one to reduce your microfibers if you don't have a filter is doing it in cold water. Don't wash your clothes so often, but cold water, it doesn't allow as many fibers to be released, and also do fuller loads of laundry versus smaller loads of laundry.
How can I speak? Yeah.
Right. Roger Short is asking to have the floor. Please, Roger, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. A couple of things. First of all, I'm an anonymous guy, but there's a little bit of this I know enough to be dangerous on. So I qualify my remarks with enthusiasm and not a complete dossier. The first thing is just a philosophical one, and it says if you can start at the beginning on things like this, I have an anomaly thing that I talk about, and that is you don't buy bigger fire trucks. You want to make sure that you stop having fires and do things that you can on that. So that's number one philosophy on the thing. The other one would be now we're into sort of technical stuff. There are things that you can do with the people that have single-use things, and they're usually big and clumsy, and you have to kick them hard on it, because if you want to know the names of the people, all you have to do is go through the soft drink dossier, and you have a gigantic one there that most of it has one use to it, and it's expensive and it's complicated, believe it or not, and they don't want to do it, so they do everything they can to do it. So if you can levy a tax on it as a part of their inability or unwillingness to do it, then in my view, you're winning a fair bit, because they'll help you by paying for it in the end, not just getting it and not caring about it. And if I can get 3 in here, just so I don't walk off with nothing. There's a company called DJ Handcrafted Outdoor Furniture. I don't know whether you know about this or not, but it's in Hanover, or one piece of it is in Hanover. And I am a technical guy, so just what I'm saying is reasonable, I think, in that regard. They, in fact, have made a business out of taking recycled plastics and essentially of doing whatever comes their way. It's a bit like Betty Crocker's. They get the stuff that they know they can do something with, and they create furniture, outdoor furniture, which has got an almost amazing life. So in other places where you have cheap plastics, these things deteriorate rather quickly, and it becomes part of your infeed. Whereas if you can get things which are popular, and even if it were subsidized, would become something of a permanent thing, you would lower the demand for cheap furniture, hopefully, and certainly its product is massively better. It won't blow away, by example, to give you an example of what it is. So you don't pick it up and walk around with it easily. Neither does the wind.
Roger, if I may interject, maybe Brooke has a chance to respond a little bit.
Sure, that's it. I just wanted to put those 3 in, and this is not me trying to sort of usurp my privilege. It's back to you, and congratulations on what you're doing.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I think it's It's exactly like support companies like that versus, you know, buying a cheap chair that you're going to have to buy every single year. Sure, it may be a bit more money, but it's worth it. And to support those, the more we support businesses like that, the cheaper their costs get too. And it comes down to it's significantly cheaper to use virgin plastic than to use recycled plastic. And that is because the infrastructure is not there. So we really need to put pressure on it and demand that we want this and that we do want this change. So yeah, it is really important. And yeah, thank you for those comments.
And we have a raised hand by either Marianne or Don Collins-Williams.
It's Don.
All right, Don.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting and also very scary. You had a lot of worrisome statistics, but the one that struck me was you saying that only 9% of what we put out to be recycled actually gets recycled.
Mm-hmm.
Are there things that we as individuals or societies or groups could do to do something about the other 90%, which presumably all goes into landfills?
Yeah, so the rest goes to landfill and the 1% goes to the environment, unfortunately. It's really concerning. And again, I will echo that this was a very quick presentation. I could talk for hours and hours and hours. So I really encourage you all to go to the YouTube and look at those 3 presentations, because all of these topics would go into much further detail. A lot of the issue with recycling is that, again, it's expensive to recycle and we don't have the infrastructure to properly recycle. So unless like initiatives like this that you're just talking about, I think that was Roger that was saying those comments about manufacturing something so close in Hanover, making these patio furniture with their own recycled materials, like that's an expensive cost for them, but they're doing it because they're passionate about it. Things like that, like that's where we need to see the change, but it also needs to be at the municipal government, the provincial government, and the federal government. We need to demand that these changes happen and this increase. BC has a great recycling system, and that's only, I think, at 15% recycling, and that is our great standard. And that, of course, is not great. When there's this thing called wish recycling, if you don't clean out your recycling and dry it out, then it's going to the landfill. Most people do not clean out or dry out their recycling. And if there is one dirty piece in your recycling bin, then it is going to the landfill. Yeah. So it's on the consumer as well to really recycle properly. But it's also not on, like, the 9% is a disturbing number that is all we're at. And I think, you know, there was this huge push. We all use our blue bin. We're also excited for our blue bin, but it doesn't actually properly go to where we think it's going, which is too bad.
Yeah.
And I know that wasn't a proper answer because there simply isn't one at this point, unfortunately.
One question came in via chat from Monica Tyrion. What should we look for on clothing labels that indicates there's plastic in it?
Yeah, so clothing is a challenging one because a lot of our clothing is now so mixed. So polyester is what most of our clothes are made of, which is a plastic. So cotton, of course, is a natural form, but it's often mixed with polyester. And then like wool is, of course, natural, but then there's a whole other part of it of the chemical composition of that's going into our clothing to dye our clothing, and cotton, where clothing consumption has increased massively just in the past 10 years. So we all have far too much clothes than we would ever need. The average clothing garment is worn 8 times before going to the landfill. So I think the biggest thing is kind of investing in your clothes in a way. Really get clothes that are going to last you 20, 30 years, not just a trendy piece of clothing that's going to be thrown out after 8 wears. But if you look for natural materials or locally made materials, and again, it does come down to financially, they are unfortunately a bit more expensive typically than, you know, fast fashion. Fast fashion is what we're all need to try to avoid, but it's also the cheapest solution. And similar to dock foam, a dock foam is the cheapest solution than a $40,000 steel tube. So we do have to acknowledge that the financial barriers between, you know, the sustainable options, but just simply buying less of the clothing. But if you are looking to buy kind of proper materials, look for kind of organic, naturally made clothes. But I will also say that that's hard to find. So until there's more pressure to put onto until there's more pressure that we want more of those clothing, then it's going to be continue to be hard to find those clothing or pieces.
Brenda, over to you.
Okay, I guess we're finished with the questions. Thank you so very much, Brooke, for joining us today. It is scary. It's absolutely scary. I knew some of those facts, but I certainly did not know them all. And it's been an eye-opener for, I think, everybody that's attended today. So again, I appreciate you coming to our meeting and making us more informed as citizens around Georgian Bay area and also world citizens. We also, as you know, our tradition is that we give an honorarium to our speakers, and that will be on its way shortly after the meeting. So again, thank you for all of your information, and thank you for the work that you're doing. You're doing it on behalf of all of us.
Terrific.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Well
very
done.
much, Brooke.
Well done.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, I will. Thank you as well.
Thank
If you have
you.
any questions, you can email me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you all. Thank you.